Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final video lesson in this course. And let's get started. We've got a lot, I think, some very interesting things that I'm not sure some of you have ever studied before. Now, I'm referring to cleft sentences. And I have to be honest, I'll just be candid. Candid is very direct. If you were to go on the streets of England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and especially the US and also Canada, or anywhere that English is a native language, is first language, and you would ask the average person on the street, can you tell me about a cleft sentence? You will get no response from most people. Or you'll get a wrong response. This is not something this is a very advanced grammatical sort of instrument or device that we use in English. And we're going to talk about it today. And it's designed to add emphasis, as it suggests right here. And then we're going to do, I think, a very difficult section on words that we confuse. Honestly, I think it's a bit difficult. And then we're going to practice pronunciation related to the cleft sentences in order to get the right or strike the right tone or emphasis when we say these cleft sentences. So let's get started. Excuse me, let's get started. Now, the first part's listening and speaking. So you're going to listen. But I want to draw your attention to a few phrases that I think are not normal. You would hear them, you would read them, you could hear them spoken, obviously, but I'm guessing most of you haven't used these expressions. And the first one is this which clause here. So you've got these villas, these village houses, which are sort of tourist houses, houses where tourists stay. And probably Airbnbs. For some of you who don't know this is sort of the name of, here, Airbnb. We say Airbnbs. Now it's become a noun or Airbnbs, it's taken after the website, Airbnb, where you can sort of rent people's homes or rooms in their home, or maybe a bed or a couch in their living room, or an apartment. And so we now call these Airbnbs when you don't own it, but it's not a hotel and you're renting it. Well, anyway, what's interesting about this is it's how it's phrased. So these houses, which have been welcoming guests to this region since 1998. That's interesting. Have been welcoming guests is a passive construction. And very interesting. Obviously, houses can't welcome guests. Sorry, it's not a passive construction, but it reads like a passive construction because houses normally can't welcome anyone. So you've got this present perfect continuous, have been welcoming. Obviously, this is metaphorical. The people who own the houses welcome them. But in this case, in English, we can use this as the houses have been welcoming guests, meaning they have had guests over the last 25 years till today. What about in your language? Can you use houses metaphorically to welcome people, to welcome tourists or guests? I'm guessing there is that option in your language, but maybe not. Fabulous views. I think we know this word, but maybe we don't use it much. Fabulous is breathtaking. Spectacular views. A nice phrase, a sight to behold. This is a sight to behold is sort of old-fashioned because of the word behold, but that phrase is a bit old-fashioned. But if you behold something, you hold it in high estimation or esteem. By the way, anytime you add BH to a verb, no, not anytime, but very often, BH signifies an older use. Not always. Behave is fine. Become is used. These two are exceptions, but there are a lot of these BE words that have fallen, I'm going to give you this expression, fallen into disuse. It means they're no longer used. They have fallen into disuse. So betwixt was a word that means between. A sight to behold. Belittle is a word, but we use belittle. If you belittle someone, you make fun of them. But a BE word is often one that is a little bit older. Then we have nooks and crannies. Speaking of old, this is a very old expression. Nooks and crannies are those remote. Remote is far away. These remote or not very sort of well-known areas of a region. These nooks and crannies. You can also use it in your home if you cleaned every nook and cranny. If you looked for your watch, maybe you lost your watch. You looked in every nook and cranny, every small area, compartment, corner to find your watch, and we didn't find it. I remember recently when I was back home to my parents, my mother lost something that I can't probably say on record, but it was quite personal. You know, old people have them, but young people don't. But she lost it. I couldn't find it. And we had to look, Dad and I spent hours looking in every nook and cranny, and we never found it. She found it 2 weeks later, but it was very funny. So we looked in every nook and cranny, and I'm sure you have as well for something, and that could be interesting. Maybe a time, it's not sometimes very pleasant, but the outcome can be funny when you find out where it's at, because we actually went through the trash looking for what my mother had lost. In this case, had misplaced. Misplaced is different than lost. Lost is permanent. Misplaced is temporary, and you will eventually find it. And that's sort of what we're going to do when we look at these words that sort of look and mean or sound or appear to mean the same. Lost and misplaced have a slightly different meaning. They're both temporarily lost, but one is more permanent. It goes beyond temporary to permanent. I've just lost it. But if it was misplaced, you hope you'll find it later. And indeed we did. Maybe you have something that you misplaced, you found later, and it was a funny story on how you looked for it. I remember as a young kid, I think we lost something in the water. We were swimming in the pool. I'm sure everyone's had this experience. And I don't know, it can be quite very tragic, actually very unfortunate. Someone can lose their wedding ring or a watch, or a phone can drop in the water. But let's say hopefully it was a less important trinket. Trinket are these things we wear, these accoutrements in the French. My French is not very good, but I'm going to use it here. These accessories. Sometimes we use accessories in the water when we're swimming, and then we have to sort of wade in the water and sort of try to find it. So we misplaced it. We eventually find it, but sometimes we never find it, and it is lost forever. All right. Let's move on to, you've got some listening here. You're going to do 10.5 and 10.6. And 10.7, possibly 10.7. And then we're going to look now at the cleft sentences. And this is where it becomes interesting. David convinced me it was a good idea. Honestly, I don't think you'll know how to put these together until we go through the grammar. Actually, you will, because you've got the grammar check. But I think this 10.8 we're going to skip, because I don't think most of us know what these are until we actually study them, which we're going to do right now, the cleft sentences. And what I want us to do, and again, how I would approach it and how I think it's best to learn these, is just in the beginning, just expose yourself to the difference between a standard sentence, imperative sentence, and a cleft sentence. And just begin to feel the difference. Now, in the beginning, it's going to be very new. You're going to say, whoa, what? Don't panic. Just expose yourself, listen, and then begin to sort of go into more details. But in the beginning, just sort of listen and repeat after me. So here we go. So this first cleft sentence strategy, or sort of syntax, is with what or all. I need a coffee. What I need is a coffee. Ready? All I need right now is a coffee. Which actually I do need a coffee. This is officially the earliest I've ever made a video lesson. Let's go to the next one. We don't like the weather here. What we don't like is the weather here. All here, using all's a bit awkward. All that I don't like is the weather. No, it doesn't really work. So, do you begin to feel the different emphasis? What we don't like is the weather here. Gives more emphasis to the weather. Next, I just want to travel. All I want is to travel. What I really want to do is travel. I only touched it. All I did was touch it. What here might not work. All I think is much better. All right, let's go to what happens is, or what happened was. Honestly, I don't use this very much. So now I teach in a very selfish manner. And what I mean by that is if I don't use it very much, and I've lived in England and the US and traveled in Europe and spoken to many different types of people who speak various forms of English, if I've not used it much, and if I've not heard it much, then we don't emphasize it much in the course. But we will go through it because I have heard it, and maybe I've said it once or twice, but I have said it, but it's just not near as common as point one. Learn the ones in point one because they're often used. What you do, okay, so let's read them. You do a test and then you have an interview. So if you want to explain it more fully, then you say what happens is that you do a test, or what happens is, I wouldn't say that. What happens is you do a test and then you have an interview. Do you hear the emphasis and the sort of cadence or rhythm of this? Let's do the next one. We left our passports at home. I would never say this, but let's practice. What happened was we left our passports at home. Now, let me tell you when this is going to be common, mainly in the present tense. Wow, so you had the casting. So let's say you're going on a casting. Castings are for actors and models, but not English teachers very often. So I don't have much experience with castings, although I've been on a few. So someone might say, listen, I want to go to that casting. I know you were there yesterday. What's it like? I would say, what happens is you register, you wait for a short interview, and then they take your photo. What happens is that, so you're explaining the process. And I think they're going to explain that here. Number two, to emphasize an event or sequence of events. All right. Now, number three, beginning with the person who or that, the thing which or that, the place where, the first time, the last time, the reason why. Wow, there's a lot here. Let's begin. I spoke to the manager. Now here's for emphasis. The person I spoke to was the manager. So you would say this when you want to emphasize, listen, I've talked to the highest person about the problem. So, I mean, we have to wait now. We can't. So the person I spoke to was the manager. Next, I was irritated by his attitude. Irritated is sort of annoyed, angered. The thing which irritated me the most was his attitude. I added the most for even extra emphasis, way of emphasis. Now we're even adding to it. So the thing which irritated, or the thing that irritated me the most was his attitude. I might say that. We stayed in a 5-star hotel. I would never say this. The place where we stayed was a 5-star hotel. Maybe I would. The place where we stayed was pretty nice. I could say that, maybe. I saw him on Saturday. The last time I saw him was on Saturday. I have said this quite a bit. So have you heard from Danny recently? The last time I heard from him was on the weekend. The last time I heard from him was last month, back in June. I bought it because it was cheap. The reason I bought it was because it was cheap. The reason I bought it was that it was cheap. I would use because. The reason I bought it was because it was cheap. Now that's a bit of a tongue twister. You might have to slow that one down because you have was coming very quickly. It and was repeated in a very short space of time. The reason why, or the reason I bought it, was because it was cheap. Could be a tongue twister if you try to do it quickly. Beginning with it. Let's start. A boy in my class won the prize. It was a boy in my class who won the prize. We had the meeting last Friday. It was last Friday when we had the meeting. I don't say these much. I don't use this one. You might want to. You're free to use it. They charged us extra for the wine. It was wine that they charged us extra for. Again, number 4, I'm going to say you rarely use it and you'll rarely hear it. This one you will hear a lot, this device. So let's put a plus. And this one you will hear a lot. This one I'm going to say in the present tense when you're asking about, you know, something, an event that you plan to go to. So, oh, I'm going to go to that festival next month. I know you were there. What's it like? Well, what happens is if you can discuss that. All right, we have a lot of underlining we're going to get rid of. Now you've got some exercises to do. And here it was me, it was I who, normally we don't say it was I who paid the bill. That's very formal indeed, and people don't say that. It was, although I think it's good to use the formal. I think there's nothing wrong with being correct, grammatically correct. You don't have to apologize for that. But commonly it was me who paid the bill. It was me who went down to buy something. That is somehow said rather frequently. Now we've gone from grammar to pronunciation. And basically what you're going to do is pronounce the things that I was already helping you pronounce. And so you can go ahead and do these in 10.9 and 10.10 before we have conversation practice. And I think this is really interesting. And I want to recommend and advise and encourage you to find a speaking partner for this last lesson and practice. What I find most difficult about living abroad is making friends with locals. It's easy to make friends with other foreigners or tourists, but it's the locals. That's the difficult part. I'm curious, actually, this is a great discussion question. Is there a country where that's not the case, where the locals are super friendly, not just because you're a tourist and they want your money, but they're friendly to the point where they're open for a friendship? So, for example, I lived in Munich, Germany, and it was really difficult to penetrate local culture, local society. In other words, to make friends with locals. And in some places, it's really difficult. Belgium, I just had a chat with people in Belgium. This is where the EU has their sort of headquarters. And people who were living there had a conversation. They said it's easy to meet people. All the foreigners are open, but you rarely meet or get to know a Belgian very well. So the locals can be difficult to get to know or to have as a close friend. What about in your area of the world? Is that model reversed, where it's actually very easy to meet locals and to become good friends with them? Let's find out over a discussion. And these others here, you can practice these cleft sentences. Let's then move on to vocabulary. And this is what I think is super difficult. And ones that I'm going to give you as a homework. So the first homework or a homework is to record a short message to me and describe the differences between one of these: foreigner, stranger, outsider. I'm going to use that one because it's one that's commonly confused or misconstrued. So you can go ahead and try to explain to me in an audio message, maybe unmeditated, not premeditated, unmeditated, spontaneously, what the differences are. Now, if you want to prepare something, you can do that as well. The point is, doing it is great, and trying to explain words that appear to be very similar. Journey, trip, voyage, walk, stroll, wander. Maybe I should do one of these. I can do walk, stroll, and wander. I think number 5 is super difficult, to be honest. Ground 7 isn't easy. Achieve, succeed, reach is not very difficult. I think it's very difficult. Let's try number 6. I don't think it's easy. So achieve is when you reach a stated goal. You have a goal and you've achieved it. You have reached that goal. You succeed when you set the goal that I have it written down here, have the result that was intended. So I've cheated, actually. So you have a goal and you meet that goal, you achieve the goal, then you succeed. So success is setting the goal, reaching it, that's the success. And to reach something, this is where it's confusing, because a lot of times I said you reached your goal, but when you reach something, it's normally a place. So we reached, I don't know, Minsk. That means we got there. We arrived at a destination. So we normally we use this often in geography, and it's probably best to keep it there. Now, there are extended uses of reach, but you reach physically for something in most instances. You can, of course, reach other things. I reach my goal. That is a set phrase to reach a goal. But in general, we got to be careful. Reach is often misused by second language learners. These others are very interesting. So give me an audio file better than what I did. I didn't do very well. I was hesitating with succeed because achieve and succeed are so very close, but slightly different. All right, go ahead and try those. Now, you're going to get some practice by putting one of those 3 in a sentence, and then we've got over here some more. Actually, this is a video listening that we're not going to do. So that's it. That's our lesson. Study hard and see you at the last live. Bye-bye.